The thought that the master merchants of the city had demanded Kendrick's release weighed on Thea's mind overnight and was still troubling her in the morning as she walked through the city. Kendrick had been clever in some ways, in limiting his kidnapping to non-humans in a city that was mostly populated by humans. Perhaps he had calculated that the mostly human population would turn a blind eye. As revolting as the idea was to Thea, she knew there was a real division and suspicion in the city. And that was just between the human and non-human populations. The ageless born were in a category all of their own. It might only take one ageless parent to make another ageless, but most of the children were born without wings, ageless born with no legal rights or citizenship, until their 25th birthdays. Thea had believed that was her, living under the constant threat of conscription, terrified that she was going to be found and dragged away into the service of the ageless. Very, very few ageless-born survived their conscripted service. She shook off bad memories and her own recent discovery. She didn't want to think about that. Even if the city's people despised the ageless-born and were often suspicious of the non-humans, she remembered the many, many people who had turned out to help when Kendrick's awful conduct had been exposed. Ordinary city folk, giving what they could in food, clothing and shelter. And some merchants too, volunteering their vehicles to help transport the victims back to their families. Not everyone in the city was narrow-minded, but everyone in the city was under the rule of the Archon and the Ageless. And Thea was reminded of that as she took a long, restless walk around the city in the morning. There must have been another ship in overnight. There were several ragged, hollowed-eyed people on the streets near the docks. A few of them wore tatters of their uniforms, and most of them were injured in some way. More victims of the Archon's never-ending wars. The Archon's army was always hungry for new recruits, but had no use or interest in the soldiers once they could no longer fight. Thea watched as a man wearing an old uniform jacket, one arm strapped across his chest and half of his face raw with healing wounds, tentatively greeted an older woman who was crying as she hugged him. His mother, Thea would guess. And although she clearly loved her son, there was pain in her face as well. Thea understood the bittersweet reunion. The Archon's empire and Acanta were hard places to live for anyone not in perfect health. With so many people seeking employment across the city, employers could pick who they wanted to work for them, and those devastated by war were not the first choice.